Welcome to the Social Priority Podcast. I'm Star Panda, and today our conversation brings us to online abuse and harassment. But first, let me introduce the Hotline coordinator for the Games and Online Harassment Hotline, Carl Olsen. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself?
I'm alright. Just chilling. Having pretty much nothing going on this morning. So, what exactly is the Games and Online Harassment Hotline?
Sure. So the Games and Online Harassment Hotline is a free, confidential, text message-based emotional support hotline for those who make and play games. It was created knowing that there's unique experiences faced specifically by gamers and game industry folks. So we've sort of trained our people to be sensitive to that, so you don't have to worry about explaining some of the unique game industry terms and culture that we run into. So if you text in for support, you don't have to explain what Discord is, for example, or what flaming is, or what rage quitting is. Our agents who support know that stuff coming in. And that's what makes us unique. Right now, we're currently running in the US, but check out our website for tons of other resources, regardless of where you're from. And to access the hotline, you want to text the word support to 23368. You can also save the number by texting info to the 23368.
Perfect. So what is your role as the hotline coordinator?
Well, to coordinate the hotline, right? So
Right.
I am involved in sort of all aspects of it. So that's from spreading awareness of the hotline to making sure that our agents who receive text messages are trained up and continue to receive training to recruit people to be on the hotline. We are also super involved in creating resources around the hotline. So part of our philosophy is to really listen to the community through the hotline and otherwise, and create resources to help folks in need.
How did you come to be a part of this project?
Well, the long version or the short version?
Whichever you'd like.
Okay. The short version is the job opened up, I applied for it, and I got it.
Fair enough.
The long version is a personal story, I guess. The journey to this position for me, I've been playing video games for most of my life. My first system was a Super Nintendo. I got it for Christmas back in the day, it feels like, and ancillarily been involved with video games socially since then. I'm 36 now, so it's been a minute. And then my professional life before this was at a university. I worked for a women's center for 7 years as a men's programming and violence prevention coordinator. So I engaged college-age men in talking about masculinity and how to get involved in the movement to end gender-based violence. And then I spent some time at the Asian Pacific American Cultural Center. So I personally am super interested in support services for victims, but also engaging in some of the preventative work to address and dismantle oppression in the first place. And so when those two things sort of converged into this job at the Games and Online Harassment Hotline, I just kind of had to apply. And it's been pretty rad so far.
Yeah, it sounds like you were pretty perfect for this role.
I think so.
So let's go ahead and go to the main topic, I'd say. So online abuse and harassment has been a thing basically since the dawn of the internet. Do you think it's gotten worse or better since then?
I'm not sure. So part of my philosophy and understanding of the internet as it relates to oppression identities, in my opinion, when white folks, specifically white men, see what they view as empty open space, they take it, right? Manifest Destiny as an example of that, IRL. So the internet is this giant wide open space for folks to take. and then claim and then feel entitled to. And I feel like for the for the game space in particular, it feels that men, in particular cis men and white men, feel really entitled to the video game space. So I don't know how much abuse has increased. I think the attitudes were always there, but then it started being proliferated by women, by people of color, by LGBTQ folks, and so then the prejudices kicked in. That would be my personal answer and philosophy to has harassment increased. I'm guessing there's studies that kind of show yeah, as more people engage with internet, more some of those underlying prejudices and a lack of fear of consequences for expressing those prejudices continues to pick up.
Yeah, that makes sense. A lot of this being kind of anonymous online kind of pushes that forward, as especially on the internet. And I don't think a lot of this abuse has been new since the internet, honestly. I think the internet kind of just made a way for people to be, I guess, more outward with that kind of abuse and stuff like that. What do you think causes this kind of behavior in people?
I mean, I think to say that when the internet was invented that this abuse was there is a little ahistorical in its perspective. It was always there, right? Like Jim Crow laws and slavery
Right.
and all of that was overt and consistently overt. So the root cause I think is still the same. It's still white supremacy, it's still sexism, it's still homophobia and transphobia. Um, you know, ableism. So and classism. So I just think that the internet helped shine a light into some of the darker corners and then also spread it to a wider audience
Mhm.
to expose it. And that might be what we're feeling now is an overstimulation and a flood of sadness and seeing the abuse and empathizing with it because as folks with marginalized identities understand that and to see it be a common thing is both empowering and also depressing.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Um, yeah, so a lot of allegations have come out about different studios in the gaming industry, and the most recent that I've known about is Activision. Do you think this is a turning point for the industry, or do we still have a long way to go?
Yes. um
Both.
yeah, both. um the gaming industry is a little bit more overwhelmingly represented by white men. The percentage of white men working in the industry is a little bit higher than other industries. um and that alone doesn't mean it's going to be a more racist and sexist and homophobic workspace, because it's not unique to other industries, unfortunately, right?
Yeah.
But I do think it was helpful, and all credit to the people who came forward to talk about it and expose it, because that in itself is dangerous, and it may have been the end of their careers to come forward and say this is happening. Um, Exposure is always great because then companies like ours or people like us can come in to game industry who are interested in some sort of systemic and institutional change to talk about what that might take and how to better support their marginalized employees and encourage diversity in games. And when we go do that, I don't think those in power realize that they're the ones that need to change.
Yeah.
And so it's been really tough going into spaces like that and trying to help sort of understand why this happens on a systemic basis, opposed to treating it this one person's the problem, so we need to be able to identify it and take care of it, opposed to thinking of it on a cultural level. So I do think there's a willingness in a lot of smaller to medium-sized game companies and game industry folks to want to enact some of that change, but in every sort of aspect, there's still just a long way to go generally.
Do you think there are any game companies that are good, um, I guess, what's the word? I guess good instances of like company. What am I trying to say?
Who's good? Like, who should I support as a
Yeah,
human?
basically. Who shines a light on what a good experience as a gaming company would be online and like in the gaming industry and all that stuff.
I don't think I have the inside institutional knowledge to answer that question directly.
That's fair.
I think because my hotline coordination, like that's more high level stuff that my supervisors kind of handle.
Okay.
For me, my understanding is that there's pockets of good everywhere, and I don't know how to endorse specific companies or avoid specific companies. I think um, this isn't online harassment stuff, but like that's the contradiction and paradox that we live in as a capitalistic society, that we have to make decisions on which to support and what not to support, because not every company is going to be like super awesome and squeaky clean.
Yeah, that's true. How can we as individuals do better?
I don't know. My overwhelming, yeah, my overwhelming like feeling these days is like we just have to keep caring about it, because the constant flood of horror stories can also desensitize us to problems, right?
Yeah.
Um, so my encouragement is for gamers and game industry folks in particular, is to just continue to make it matter and continue to try to feel empathy and feel compassion and feel anger and rage for anything that does or doesn't happen in these companies. And like for me as a consumer, like I wrestle with this all the time. Um, like I play Activision games, because they're fun and they help me cope with other things. And so um, my sort of thought around it is like financial support, you can reduce some of that for these games, right? Like some of them are free, but they have microtransactions and stuff, so you can not spend your money on the game but still enjoy it for free.
Hmm.
Um, so some of this critical consumption of video games kind of translates to other stuff
Like
in
the
your daily
latest
life.
Overwatch that just came out. Like they have a free they're basically free, but like we can make the choice not to buy those transactions that are on that platform, right?
Yeah. The Kiriko skin is $20 or whatever. Like you could not
Oh
buy it.
god.
Right. So yeah, and it's a free Overwatch 2 is free to play, so which is great. Even though nobody can get in right now, but uh, like you can make financial decisions to support or not support, because that's where it really, I think, shifts the tide in policy. Unfortunately, is like profit and money. Um, so I would encourage trying to learn about some of the darker corners of the companies or not, and then choose what companies to support financially specifically. I also think it's really helpful to talk about representation, right? Like when Apex Legends came out and they kept coming out with new legends who were like people of color or women, there was a lot of complaints from what I would assume are mostly white men about representation of white men. I'm just like, you still have like 4 or 5 characters. I'm not totally sure what you mean.
Yeah, that's
Um,
been a big thing lately, even with um like in movies and TV shows.
Rings of Power.
The latest yeah, especially Rings of Power, like a black woman being like one of the main characters in that show. I haven't seen it yet, so I'm not sure
Okay.
completely. But I have been hearing a ton of like complaints about it, with like it being woke basically, and like the only thing they're pointing to is that she's black, and like it doesn't make sense to me because like if she was white, would there be much of a difference in that, you know?
Well, I don't think it's meant to make sense. Like racism doesn't necessarily have a foundation of sense. It's just prejudice. You know what I mean? So
Right.
um, I think talking about why representation matters is also a way to critically engage in problematic company content. Um, to like use it as a platform to help spread awareness and education around why representation matters and why it's like cool and like I don't know why to try to chip away at some of the white male entitlement in video games is to talk about the representation in video games. And so those are some of the strategies I would encourage to critically engage in gaming specifically.
What would you say is the reason those kinds of things matter?
I mean, just personally, so I identify as a hetero cis man, mixed race. I'm Japanese and white. I'm disabled, middle class. But like, I don't know if there's a whole lot of visual representation of mixed Asian men in video games, but like Asian characters generally put a smile on my face, and I can relate to their character more. And what gets me about people who are angry is like I've been relating to video games my whole life, and I've been only playing mostly exclusively white men in these video games, right? So to say that you can't relate or can't be immersed in a video game because there's no choice to be a white dude is like ignorant. But there's just so many stories of kids and adults saying like how special a moment was because they saw themselves reflected in a piece of popular media. That it's important to have visual and emotional connections to the things that we see to sort of validate our own existence. There's plenty of studies like about representation of like Native American mascots and how detrimental that is to the mental health and well-being of Native American kids and people. And so the opposite effect of that is like a positive thing that we could be doing for everyday people.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's really important that we get those things out there for like even like those kids out there who are playing video games to see like video games, movies and TV shows, like all these things could really help kids like see themselves in media and like know that like they can go into these fields, they can do these things that like that maybe they didn't realize they could do. It's very empowering seeing yourself in those kinds of positions, because like a lot of the time it seems like people are constantly telling you that you can't, because like I'm sure like being disabled has that sort of feeling for you, right? Like people telling you like you can't do this because you're this way or another or whatever. Like it feels very similar to like how I felt growing up being Black, Hispanic, Native American. Like I didn't see myself in those positions, you know?
Sure. Like even, you know,
No, go ahead.
even I had to clear my throat.
Oh,
Even
sorry.
like that's all good. When I like feel some sort of way of retroactively making things diverse. So like Symmetra and Overwatch, for example,
Right.
after a couple of years after the release of Overwatch, the devs are like, "Oh yeah, she's autistic or whatever." It's just like, okay, I don't know if I totally agree with that, and I hear a lot of stories of like autistic people saying like, "I knew it all along," you know, like I love this, like I'm so glad that the main character that I play also sort of identifies the way I do, and so like there's a really tricky balance between what representation does for people, but also like how to represent, right? Like when are we going to see a Black, Native, Hispanic character in video games? I'm not sure if we ever will. And like, be cool, you know? So
Yeah.
like, yeah.
I think that is a good point. Like, I don't know where the line is where like, because like there's been so many issues that people have brought up over the years of retroactively making people diverse, and I think for me, I've come to the conclusion that like it's fine. Like we can make these things more diverse over time because like these are fictional characters, and like I feel like it's not really doing a disservice if like they've had certain um I guess details about them made into canon that have always been there, but like I guess in a way it's a flanderization at some point that like people put these other details on them that can become canon that don't really I guess what's the word? Like um aren't I guess different from what they were before. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Sure.
And yeah, it's for me, I guess it's like more of an issue if it's like the opposite of what they were before, you know, unless it's like a complete remake of what they were. Like if it's a continuation, I would rather that like they I guess pushed in a different direction or like pushed in I guess the same direction that they were going before. Like I guess for example Bridget from what's it called? Uh God, what the fuck is it called? um
Don't know which to have that, so I can't help.
Gears something. Guilty Gear. Guilty Gear Strive. Bridget just came out at the devs brought her out as a trans identified person. And I think it was really great because like the story she has is basically she thought for a long time she was a boy and she wanted to um present more masculine by doing these more masculine things, but realized later on that that's not who she is. Like at first she was forced into a more feminine role, but like she didn't want uh to do that for other people. She wanted to do it for herself in the end. And I think that is fucking great, you know?
That's really cool.
Yeah. So I think more stories like that. I think that is how you do it right. You know, like as a trans person, I felt like really that was really cool what they did. So like those kinds of stories, I just think I think it's really cool that they did that. I know I'm like repeating myself a lot, but like
Okay.
I think that uh like people complaining about those kinds of things when there hasn't been like any kind of contradiction in the story and that kind of stuff is
Mhm.
really important for us to like call out, you know.
Wait.
um so yeah, the is there do you think anything people should be aware of online in sectors of like online spaces that we should be keeping an eye on and stuff like that?
Um, well, I can sort of answer this through the some of the common issues that people come to the hotline to inquire about.
Oh, absolutely.
Um, and so, if we're more aware of these things, then we're more able to intervene. And so, there's like there's just various ways people text in talking about either online harassment or in-game harassment, right? So, online harassment for us, like we don't want to think of it as sort of this one-off instance. We want like the people that text in feel like it's very like there's an extended campaign against it, basically like getting harassed for months or years. Um, so more of a pervasive feeling in there, right? Like just sort of existing as a person of color or as LGBTQ on the internet invites online harassment. And that's sort of the pervasive nature that we want to think about and talk about when it comes to harassment.
So
Um,
like being harassed because of identity, right?
yeah,
Like of who you are in your day to
did
day.
nothing. Yeah, you showed your face, someone writes like a gay slur about you.
Yeah.
Um, and that's just something that gay folks just have to contend with as you exist online. Like it's sucks, but that's we want to frame harassment as, opposed to like this one time in game, you whiffed on a bunch of your shots and your random called you, or your random told you to go kill yourself or whatever, right? Like that's harassment for sure, but like part of the way we want to frame harassment is this sort of this pervasive cultural thing that happens in games.
Mhm.
Um, the industry is experiencing a ton of burnout and toxic workplaces. So we get a lot of texts saying like, I used to have passion for making video games. I used to love video games, but my workplace is kind of beating that out of me. What should I do?
Yeah, that I've heard that a lot.
Hmm.
I think we have, as like, I guess in the gaming industry and gamers ourselves, we've been shining more of a light on like um I guess the workplace culture, like the culture of what's it called when they're like uh going to develop the game like over long periods of time, um like overnight and stuff like that. It's like I can't remember the word.
I know
um
what we're talking about too, and I can't remember it.
Anyways, like those kinds of things we've been shining more of a light on, and I think we need to care more about it, because like I'm it have more people been complaining about that over time?
Um, I also I think the pandemic we're in has really changed the way we think about work, and
Oh
so that's no different in the gaming industry. Like guessing at the end of creating a video game, um, that shouldn't have been a common practice
yeah,
before the pandemic, but the pandemic I think really highlighted like, oh wait, this is fucked up. Like we shouldn't be doing this. And then as we quote unquote come out of it, I think it, developers want to go back to that kind of work style, and I think there's a lot of resistance, either passive or active, resistance to going back to that. And so um, I also think that the mental health conversation and burnout conversation has been elevated to the degree in which people are able to recognize it within themselves now a little bit more clearly than in the past. And I do think the pandemic had a lot to do with that too. So, again, sort of the answer earlier to has harassment increased? I don't know if burnout has increased necessarily. I think the awareness of it has, and people are more willing to talk about it. And that's why maybe we're hearing more an elevated concern for workplace burnout and workplace environments.
yeah, yeah. Crunch is the word I was looking for.
Crunch.
uh,
There you go. That's what it
yeah.
is.
But yeah, I'm glad more people are coming out with these stories, and like just getting more help on like being able to talk about that kind of stuff, because like we need to shine a light on these things, make sure the industry, and then like I guess society in general is doing better for each other, you know.
Yeah, and burnout conversations on the hotline are tough because like there's no real easy solution. Like there's not
Yeah,
it's not something that can be solved in a 30-minute, 45-minute text conversation. And so, but we do get people looking for support in that. So that's good. Like we want people to reach out for help. Like that's a really important first step. Um, the other things that is popping up on the hotline that we weren't totally expecting. We're in year 3, by the way. We turned 2 in August.
oh nice,
Um, we
congratulations.
appreciate it. Um, we didn't really sort of expect is people texting in um like who have caused harm. So like
Say that one more
there
time. I don't think the mic picked it up.
one of the things that we were surprised a little bit with the types of textures that came in were people who had caused harm.
Hmm.
So like caused harm, felt guilty, or like got kicked out of a community or Discord or whatever, and or like there's pushback on them being like misogynistic, for example, and then they take that as harassing. And so like it's it was a really interesting process for the hotline to see people text in who have obviously caused harm but are like want to be accountable to that harm, but also feeling guilty and scared and hopeless after that because they can't go back to the community or they feel like they can't go back to the community that they've like really felt like they belonged in. And so one of the things that we've been trying to roll out this year is a support group, like an accountability support group for people who have caused harm. I think it aligns a lot more with our values to take these folks in and like give them support in a way because they are part of the gaming community too. And if they're able to receive support and see sort of like the error of their ways, just kind of creates a better culture generally in gaming if we don't say like, oh, you're a dick, get out of here. You know, more like recognize that you cause harm. Let's talk about that. Let's see what we can do better moving forward. How can we grow from this? You know, so that's one of the weirdly cool things that came out.
Yeah.
We're trying to support this coming year.
Yeah, I think that's really great, honestly. I know I want to have a conversation about like men's issues at some point. Excuse me. And I think one of the really big issues is like men not really knowing like what communities to go to because like a lot of the time we do have these issues that get brought up for like minorities and women and stuff like that. And we sometimes forget that like men have issues of their own and like we need to support them in some sort of way, especially if they come to a hotline like yours and are looking to like I guess rectify what they have realized they've done. And like in that way I feel like these communities that like persist in like if you've heard of what happened with Andrew Tate, like he basically got taken offline because he was saying so many misogynistic things, and like men kind of sometimes gravitate towards those things because like they're basically accepted right away and all that stuff. And I feel like that's a really good thing to have communities where like these men are able to have this outlet with other people in their positions, but aimed towards a more positive outcome, right? So
sure, like treading into the world of support for men is tricky because like it's not necessarily that hard to be a man in US society, at least. Like
right.
They have it kind of good actually. Like you don't have to worry about being sexually assaulted every day. You don't have to gear up and armor up all the time to like worry about that, right? You're more likely to get jobs. You're more likely to get paid more. Like there's just a ton of things about being a man in U.S. society, a cis man in particular in U.S. society, that's like we shouldn't be complaining as men about our status in society. There's still groups that absolutely find a way to do that, but that's not who we are. So what I like to say, I like to frame it as like it's like a different kind of tough, like it's a different kind of hard. It's like hard being a woman in society. It's hard being trans in society. It's hard being a person of color in society. But there are, as you said, different aspects of being a man that is hard. One of them is like asking for help. And one of our values is to encourage help-seeking behavior. And so really want to encourage everyone how to help ask for help. But we also recognize like asking men to ask for help needs to have sort of a different tact to it because of the way most cis men are like raised, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I absolutely agree. You don't have to be a loner.
Yeah, and what's tough, well, yeah, so the radicalization of men can stem from them feeling isolated and alone because they're just being men in the world without critical thought to it, and being a man in a world without critical thought usually leads to causing harm. And like, I do think social justice communities, if you will, gaming communities with some critical thought could do a better job of figuring out ways to support men who mean well, who express regret, who want to do better. Um, but we have to pick and choose there because it usually means for a lot of folks to engage with their oppressor or to engage with the person who caused harm. So I think it's a really difficult, nuanced thread to do around
Mhm.
talking about supporting men in the industry. Um, and it's not that simple because there are men of color out there who experience a lot of like racialized or ableist harassment, right? So it's just super broad and deep and nuanced conversation to have, which I'm all here for.
Yeah, I would love to see some solutions on that, honestly. Like, um, I don't know. Like, I have seen, like, I've heard some solutions on like building more communities that are more positive, that aren't like these misogynistic, like black pits, I guess. Um,
Yeah,
and I'm not sure where we go from here. Like, I think your hotline is great, and I think that's doing a good thing. And I feel like more men need that kind of support. But beyond having those like spaces, I don't know what else we do per se. Like, I think we need to brainstorm, I guess, as a community, um, on how to do those things, how to support like even like mental health type of stuff. Like, we need to support people a little more. Um,
I
yeah,
agree. Um, I so to try to simplify it, I think for me and my experiences working specifically with college age men, I think the simple solution to sort of breaking the very hard shell of toxic masculinity and the armor that a lot of cis men put up the answer is vulnerability. Like, if we can get these particular men to practice vulnerability, then the cracks in that toxic shell start to really form, because vulnerability requires a level of exposing yourself and also um, empathizing with others, so you're able to take in more, like, oh, happened to you and it hurt you. Now I also feel hurt. Like, we need more people to be able to do that, and vulnerability is the key to that for me. And so, encouraging men to be vulnerable by creating safer spaces for that is absolutely part of the solution. And that's really, really difficult to do when we're kind of sort of talking about like one-off randoms in multiplayer game who
yeah,
like scream a base slur at you and then leave, so like, one of the things about harassment that I don't think people understand or expect is that I think, well, I know that a lot of the texts that come in, it's more about community harassment and less about some of those one-off in-game harassment. So like, they've been in this awesome Discord community for a long time, and then like as more people came in, like some of the harassment and misogyny started to pop up, and they don't know what to do, or like it's this only group of friends that they've ever had, and one of them's a kind of a bully and like continues to harp on my lack of skill or whatever, right? So harassment can be super, super relational too. And so knowing that it's mostly like groups of people that are part or ancillary to the harassment, there's also a lot of opportunity to intervene and support each other and understand like why harassment happens and then start mitigating the effects of harassment. Sense.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Um, I think a lot of us need to like speak up when those instances happen. Um, I think a lot of us kind of default to passiveness, um, especially in like American society. Like, we basically keep to ourselves, and um, we just stay in our lane a little too much. and I think we can do a little better, like sticking up for the people that we like talk to every day and play games with and stuff like that. I think that kind of support goes a long way for a lot of people, and we need to do a little more of it.
Yeah, and it can be scary too, right? Because you don't want the ire of this harasser to turn to you. Like,
Yeah, I think that's part of it, because like I think in society there are a lot of those people who try to do that, like be a little more macho, I guess. And you definitely, like you said, don't want that to turn towards you, but like sometimes we gotta do something, right?
Yeah. One of the things, so that does come up a lot on the hotline, and we are like people who really want to respond to the direct needs of the community, and so we do want to create some sort of like online bystander intervention workshop type of thing potentially, is to because like intervening is and can be scary and a vulnerable thing to do, but if you're sort of equipped with skills on how to do that, it's easier to do. So
Oh
one of
yeah,
the things that we want to do this coming year is to develop some sort of bystander intervention workshop.
that would be so great. Yeah, I would love to see something like that. So what ways can we I guess help your hotline or like contact you guys and stuff like that?
Yes. Currently, probably the best way to support the hotline is to spread awareness of it. We do have a website, gameshotline.org. The other absolute best way you could do to support is to donate. We're always looking for donations to help support and run the things on the hotline, like producing resources. Recently, we put out a hate raids resource, a very comprehensive document, and I guess it's a web page, but like it feels more like a book on
Hmm.
hate raids and how to deal with them, how to mitigate them, what to expect. So if you go to gameshotline.org/hate raids, you'll see that that thing is awesome. It also has a lot of really cool nestled into it, like how to protect your Discord community. So there's like a lot of things you can do in Discord to sort of help mitigate and or prevent hate raiders and harassers coming into your community and doing the same thing. So that one's really cool. I've been getting a lot of blackmail or texts related to blackmail on the hotline recently too. So we're trying to
Hmm.
pump out a resource on what to do if you're being blackmailed. And this usually involves like sending nudes consensually and then them turning back around and saying, "Give me money" or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So look out for those things. But yeah, support for us usually means like spread the word, 3368 support. Um, like tell streamers, tell your buddies, tell game devs, tell everybody that we exist. We're more than willing to. We're excited to. It's weird to be like excited to help people who are like basically in pain, but
Yeah.
it's so important. Um,
I mean, making a difference like that is really important, especially to like a gaming community that's been hurting for so long.
for sure.
Was there a way you can get involved? Like for, I see there's charity streaming that you can do. Let's see, there's oh, what's this Games Hotline Champions that I'm seeing?
That's also related to streamers, but I think we have some champions within like game development companies. But being a champion means like the hotline is like kind of it's integrated into your stream.
Mhm.
And whenever we have like content to push out, so like the hate raise resource, our champions are people that we would push that out to help push to continue to push it out to streaming communities that we can't reach. And so a champion is related to like kind of getting some of the resources that we get and championing it.
Yeah, sounds great. And it looks like there's also a way to volunteer. Is that right?
Yes, I would email I think it's hello@gameshotline.com.
And there's also a
just
contact form up here if they want to go
Right.
straight to the website.
Exactly. So use all that, and we'll figure out how to be involved.
Is there anything else you wanted to add? Anything you wanted to shout out?
So we're trying to. Well, we are open from 3 to 7 Pacific every day in the United States. We are also working on integrating WhatsApp, so we're really excited about that. Be on the lookout there. I feel like there was more, but I still have like early morning fog going on in my brain. So
that's okay.
We actually have a ton of resources on online security. So we're updating our online security guide called Stay Safe or Speak Up and Stay Safer. There's a ton of resources on there. If you're worried about your information leaking online, or if you want to do a little bit more to increase and beef up your online security, I would highly recommend our Speak Up and Stay Safer resource guide. It's unbelievable. I'm pretty new to like game industry stuff and online security stuff, and it's bonkers how much of our information gets leaked out and what we can do to like stop or help at least stem that tide. So that's something I would recommend.
Yeah, sounds great. Well, I appreciate you coming on.
Appreciate you for having me.
It was a great conversation. I appreciate it.
Likewise.